Hey guys, welcome back to The Drop with Frank and Brian. Before we get started in this week's episode, we just want to let you guys know that we have something awesome going on. We're doing another giveaway on our website, and this time we're giving away a Legacy sliding rag top. All you got to do to enter is go to either one of our sites, livelifecustom.com or
grinder-tv.com.
And for every $5 you guys spend, you get one entry into the drawing.
Yep, and if you just want the details, go to the websites, click on the giveaway tabs. Is yours a giveaway tab? What does it say up there?
Mine is just a banner on the front of the website.
Just a banner, and mine says giveaway on the top of the website. And we should be adding some more products to the website soon, too. And Frank, you just added banners. I just added new hats. So
go check them out.
Yeah, go check them out. Enjoy the episode.
All right. Welcome to the show. Episode number 5. I'm Frank. No, episode number 6. I'm sorry. Episode number 6. I'm Frank, Kustom Life.
And I'm Brian, Grinder TV.
And today's topic, we're going to be talking about mini trucking in general. But first, before we get started, I have my mic stand this week.
You do?
I do. I'm like in it now. I feel so professional. But
I like how you have it kind of set up a little different.
Yeah, yours is like kind of like pointing. I don't know. It's a little different.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Doesn't matter as long as it works.
Mm-hmm. And so it seems to be working. How you doing in the heat? I looked at the weather today. It's not.
Oh, I'm just not leaving my house. Yesterday, Mike Milan met with Dino down at where Dino's Get Down is going to be. He's actually moving it again this year. Mm-hmm. Was at Westgate there in Glendale, but now he's moving it to where the Cardinals play, the NFL stadium.
Oh, cool.
So Mike's like, hit me up in the morning. He's like, hey, you're gonna come meet us at 5? And I was like, yeah. And then the day drag on, and like at 4 o'clock, I was like, I'm not going.
Just too hot.
And he's like, how you gonna leave me hanging? I said, dude, no.
It's. I was looking at the weather. It's like what, 115 this weekend?
This weekend, yeah.
Jeez.
Right now, it's only 105.
Yeah, it's only about 95 here.
Yeah, so it's gonna get to 109 today, and then 110. 111 this weekend.
As Erica would say, that's disrespectful hot.
It is, but I mean, and it's the funny thing is it's the topic every year, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, does it get kind of old? Like, there's some people, like tall people, always like the first people, like when people meet tall people, the first question they ask is like, oh, how tall are you? Or do you play basketball? So living in Arizona in this extreme heat, you must get sick of people asking like, does it get hot there?
No, but it's funny is like when we go to car shows and stuff, do you notice there's 2 questions. Uh-huh. There are two intros. One is, how was the drive? Mm-hmm. 2, and then it goes right into weather.
Yeah.
Drive, weather.
The weather on the drive.
The topics is always weather. So
it's small talk.
It's just one. Yeah, it is. It is small talk.
But it's important. Small talk. It breaks the ice.
So. It's a dry heat.
So it's a dry heat here too. It's just not 115 dry heat.
I would rather be outside right now in 110 than 90 and humid.
Oh, for sure. 100%. Yeah, for sure.
100%.
100%. All right. So now that we got the small talk weather out of the way, let's talk about today's episode, which is mini trucking. And, this is an interesting topic. Just one, because like, not only that's like the theme of kind of what we do, it does vary, it's not just mini truck centric, but it's sort of like where we came from, right? Or who we are, or like what we identify with the most.
I think it's definitely what our entire lives are surrounded.
I think so.
But surrounded by or made up of, or it's the only thing I kind of know.
Yeah, same here. And it's an interesting thing to say mini trucking, or that you're a mini trucker. Just because like it's like such it's not a specific term. I mean, although it is our not main focus, but although some of our focus is mini trucks, the word mini truck is sort of like a blanket kind of term, because like not everybody in the mini truck scene drives mini trucks. I mean, it's a pretty, diverse scene as far as vehicles are concerned. It's not just mini trucks. It's full-size cars. It's old cars. It's new cars. It's even lifted trucks,
It's always been lifted trucks, though, because you remember back in the 80s, Mini Truckin' Magazine had at least one lifted truck, per issue. Mini Truckin' Lifted trucks were a big part of mini trucking back then.
Yeah. Yeah, and kind of today too, but I think it's changed. Like back then, like I don't see too many of those like traditional like lifted huge big
Oh no,
lift on 40s, or 44s.
No,
It's changed definitely.
It's definitely changed. I mean, that kind of went away in the, I want to say, the early 2000s, late 90s. The guys that were still doing it were like Toys R Us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're still building those kind of trucks. They're still cruising around.
Yeah, and exactly. But that's definitely a different scene than, say, like, I don't know, what do you call it, the American Force scene?
So it's kind of like being on traveling so much, and it's funny that we're talking about lifted trucks first and not, bag mini trucks, but talking about lifted trucks, like traveling the country and going to both coasts and seeing, the scenes in different places. It's a different scene on both coasts. So like to me, that like really big, huge lift, billet wheels, stretch tires, which actually started, we can get into the nuts and bolts of it, which actually started as like a Hawaiian thing and then a Central California thing, but now lives in that space of the East Coast. But on the West Coast, those trucks aren't really around. You're starting to see them pop up here and there, but that's not the lifted truck in like the West Coast, like SoCal scene. Out here, it's more like a pre-runner type look, kind of more function over form out here,
Well, not really, because it's more brodozer, which is not a really... well, yeah, but it's still not a function over form type thing.
Some of them are.
You know what I mean?
Some of them like the pre-runners and stuff like that.
No. What are the? They're not. They don't function. There's no function over form with the pre-runner. I mean, unless that thing's a full long travel. You know what I mean?
There's a few out there. Well, I mean, it's just like anything. It's just like anything. There's like a proper look, this kind of segues right into the mini truck stuff too. There's like a proper look, and we're talking about pre-runner specifically. So a proper pre-runner is, like you said, something with a mid to long travel suspension that goes out to the desert and does a specific thing, right? So those trucks look really cool. Aesthetically, they look really cool. So then you have these like proper trucks, but then you have people trying to emulate that look. And by doing so, that's when it starts getting to the non-functional part. Because now,
I would say, which is 90% of your lifted trucks.
I would say, yeah, that's fair.
Pre-runners, whatever. I mean, and that's fine, because if you're in Southern California, you're 90% going to be on the asphalt.
Yeah, right, except for where I live. So. I live sort of like in the, not necessarily the off-road capital of Southern California, but pretty close. Like I live out in the the high desert. So maybe my perspective is warped, because when I'm out and about, I see all these trucks. So I like where I live, there's the main basically vein from the freeway out to the desert where people race. Mm-hmm. So I see hundreds of rigs, going up and down, and those are like proper pre-runner trucks. So maybe my perspective is a little skewed on that.
Yeah. And they're probably still not proper.
Unless
they're on a trailer.
The most of them are on a trailer.
Yeah, I know. It's funny when you say SoCal and then you think like, I am in SoCal and I also live in the desert.
Yeah.
It's like not just city after city after city. Like
I live in a unique area. I live in a very unique area. But anyway,
unique is a good word for it, Frank.
All right. All right. So, we got on that topic, but we are talking about mini trucking, and I wanted to start the conversation. I'm going to break this down into pieces. The first piece is just sort of like what we like about mini trucking, how we don't have to go into so much depth because we've done that before. Like our history is about joining clubs and stuff like that. But I just kind of want to do a quick summary of like exactly what we like about it, what we love about it, and what continues to drive us to these shows.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that these topics are going to expand on our history too. Mm-hmm. Because when after we did that whole first episode, or even the second one where we were talking about ours, we left so much out.
Oh yeah.
So when we revisit these topics of mini trucking or whatever it is, it's going to expand on the history as well.
Every single episode, we do the episode, and I don't know if this happens to you, but I'll give you a little insight of what happens to me. We do the episode. I almost have like a high afterwards from doing it that takes a couple hours to wear off. So like we finish the episode, I sit at my desk, I'm like, that was great, and had so much fun. And then a couple hours later, I'm thinking, just reliving the whole thing in my head, and I go, oh, I forgot to say this. I forgot to say this. Yeah. This was important. So yeah, I think, throughout all of these episodes, we're just going to start plugging in, information and filling the gaps kind of thing,
Yeah, for sure. So. That last episode was pretty interesting on a behind the scenes scale for Frank and I, because we were both it was funny because we were talking about camera equipment and we're both using new equipment and we had some little hiccups.
It was completely ironic.
And even, I don't know if anybody noticed, but the end of that last episode, the first half of the day, it was wrong. It was overlapped. My wife, Chelsea, messaged me and she said, were you guys talking over each other? And I said, we were more than normal in that one. But no, she goes, no, this is like a bad edit. So I jumped out of bed, ran in here, and I was like, oh yeah, we were literally talking over each other.
Yeah.
And I had to fix it and re-upload the audio and re-upload the video. So.
That's like worst case scenario, creating videos and content, stuff like that. Now imagine if you were a creator who, when you posted a video, it garnered like hundreds of thousands of views, and then it was wrong, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah. The good thing though is you still get those views counted. So.
Oh, okay. Well then there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll take it all in stride.
So we got the 150 views or so that we lost on that.
Yeah.
Still counted on the channel. So
we'll put that in the ledger. So the question at hand.
Yes.
What do you love about mini trucking, or what draws you to this scene, or what keeps you doing all of this stuff?
Money.
Well, then you're in the wrong business, man.
I don't know. I've been doing it for so long. It's changed over time. You know, when I've gotten into Forbidden Fantasy, our mini truck club, when I was 18. And then it was like coming out of high school, it was just a continuation of hanging out with friends. And then going to my first truck run, it was just like, wow, this is insane. You know, like the partying and just I guess you could probably, it's like if you went off to college and you got into a frat.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Right. Mm-hmm. You know, so that's where those people go for their party or whatever. And for mini truckers, it was going to a truck run or a truck show and just getting crazy.
Yeah. No, you know, when you're young, because I started at the exact same age I started when I was 18. And that's a really good way to put it, that it is kind of like joining a frat, you know. And it's interesting, kind of in my personal case, at the same time, Angie went to college. So when, you know, after she graduated high school, she started going to San Francisco State. So she was really far away. I was here. I joined my first truck club, which is kind of funny. So Angie went off to college and I went and joined a truck club.
And that legacy continues now.
It does. We still kind of have the same theme going on. But yeah, you know, in the beginning, it's just so much fun and it's so new. And I'm pretty sure that you felt the same way. But when you're young in a truck club going to truck shows, that is like literally the only thing that matters. And
it is.
Your whole week is just to get to the weekend to go to the truck run or truck show.
I've said that exact same thing. It is Monday. All you're looking forward to is the weekend. You know, if you work not even if you work or whatever, because the things happen on the weekend, but that's when the car show was. It was like, what's the next one? What's the next one? And back when I started, it was truck runs. You know, my first Rezo, and then it was Spring Splash, and then it was Endless Summer and Council Run and Summer Madness, and just like you just look forward to all this stuff, and yeah, and it consumed my entire way of life.
Yeah, same.
You know, and yeah, that's kind of how it was, and then through my 20s, through my 30s, it was kind of the same thing, you know, and then it turned into like bigger things, like when you start with littler or smaller shows, and then you start to venture out into bigger shows, like, and then all of a sudden you start to figure out what SEMA is, and you start, you know, it just all these different avenues that you can go down because of mini trucking.
You know what? And that's good. That was kind of somewhere in my notes. Like, it's this whole thing that I've been doing for the last 20 years has really opened up. It sounds cheesy, but opened up doors to so many things. And it was simply just going to truck shows and meeting people, you know, and kind of like, if you want to get a little motivational on it, you know, and advice for people doing this is just like, you got to showing up. Like me, just going to a truck show and showing up has introduced me to so many people and put me in so many different things, you know? And so I
think that's a big thing, is you just have to go. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I first got in Forbidden Fantasy, I want to say Probably about a year into it because I had an '86 Toyota pickup and I had to pull the motor out. Me and my buddy put a new one in, and we painted the engine compartment and did all this stuff and made it look nice. And I remember the first show I went to after that, I went to by myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and a couple of the guys in the club showed up, and said, "What's up? High fives, how's it going?" And then they left, and it was just me, and I didn't care that I was by myself. You know what I mean? I was just having a good time.
Yeah.
And I think if you can do that, if you can go to an event alone or with a buddy, and it doesn't matter if you're in a big club or a small club, you just enjoy that time because all those people are there for the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it doesn't matter who you're there with or whatever.
Right.
And it opens up opportunities. And now you look at some of these people in their 40s and what they're doing because they went to those car shows.
Yeah, yeah, and we're examples of that. Like it just shaped our whole, not existence, but shaped our whole. I don't know what the right word I'm looking for. Like not existence, but it shaped something. It shaped us.
Like like your destiny almost.
Maybe. I mean, that's getting pretty.
I don't know. I mean, I know. Well, funny thing is, next weekend I'm filming a Blazer that is being delivered to Travis Barker and Kourtney Kardashian.
No way.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So, like that, all the things that I've done
have led
me to this. And we've had run-ins with Travis in the past and stuff like that. But it's like he's such a huge superstar now, and it's just like it's weird where it leads you. You know what I mean? And it could be anything. You never know.
That's really cool. Is it that the one that Hoagie Shine built?
It's a different one. Different. So that one that he built he didn't actually build it for Travis. He built it as kind of a marketing thing.
Oh.
And then this one is actually going to him.
That's cool, man.
He's like, yeah, I'm delivering it end of next week. We could film it beginning of the week. And I was like, cool. I'm just like, can I go with you? You want me to film the delivery?
You just stand there with your camera. You're like, hey, what's going on?
I know. Just follow him out there. He looks at me. I'm in the Titan behind him. Like,
you're like, hey. That's funny. That's really cool. That's really cool, man. So yeah. So from my perspective, I'm just kind of going to go over what I like about the truck scene and what draws me to it and what keeps me going back to all these shows. And I've made a list and I put some thought into it. And I think the number one thing that keeps me going to all of this stuff, and it's one word, it's culture. Like that's what I love the most about it. Now, I like getting into the scene when I was 18 and like, growing in the scene. Even before that, I was already interested in cars and car culture and stuff like that. And I remember reading books about 60s counterculture and reading about all these people like Von Dutch and Ed Roth and like all of these guys who did it in like the 60s and stuff like that. And it really got me interested in it. And wasn't until I got into the scene and like started like getting into it that I realized that like, oh, this is my culture. This is my version of the stuff that I read. And I say this a lot to a lot of people, and that's what keeps me going is I just love the culture, which is the culture is everything. It's like the trucks, the people, the shows, the travel. It's like everything, and so that's what keeps me going in all of this stuff. Yeah.
I thought you were going to keep going on that one.
You thought I was going to say something else.
I thought you were going to say something else.
No, that was it. No, that's sort of like why I keep doing it is I am fascinated by it's just fascinating to me that like this thing is just this ever-evolving scene, this ever-evolving culture, this ever-evolving bunch of people. And it's like, it seems to me like it's always a little bit different. Like every time we go to a show and every time we travel, it's always a little bit different. It's always exciting. And that just that's what keeps on making me go back, makes me keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, what do you think the biggest changes are from when you started doing it to now?
That's a good question because like if you looked at it objectively, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
All we're doing is we're building trucks or cars, or we use trucks as sort of like a general term. We're building these vehicles. We're still taking them to shows. We're still hanging out with our friends. That has not fundamentally changed.
Yeah.
To me, what has changed, it's kind of two things. You said earlier, like, when you were 18, you were different. Well, we've been doing this so long now that we've turned into different people. We're not the same people we were when we were 18. We're completely different people. So to me, that's one thing that's changed is we just kind of, we just evolve as people as personalities, as
Well, we've grown up.
yeah. I mean, yeah, that's one way to put it.
And
That's a good way to put it.
And I remember when I was 18, this is going to even through my early 30s, I didn't want to grow up. I never did. You know what I mean? I thought this is what I'm going to be doing forever. I want my friends at my house all the time. I had the house where people would come and party. You know what I mean? And park their cars in the front yard. And this happened on the weekends and everything. And I just was like, I don't want this to ever change. And then there comes a time where you're okay with not doing that. Mm-hmm. And then there comes a time after that when you don't want to do that. And this is what I was explaining to you is it changed. A lot of things changed for me when I got into I'm 45 years old right now. When I think maybe 42-ish, I don't know what it was, but not doing things was just as much fun as doing things. And that,
what do you mean?
Like, I could not, like, waking up in the morning on a Saturday and not going anywhere is just as fun to me as going to a truck show.
Yeah. No, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I totally get that.
I never thought that was going to be something. And it's kind of the thing where you have to be okay with that, you know? And other people have to be okay with that. Like, especially when it comes to the truck club world, because you do have like groups of people that get older and don't do as much stuff as they did when they were younger, I guess. And then you have the younger people that want to do this. I don't know where I'm going with that, but
no, well, my question is like, do you think, cause I feel that same way too. Like sometimes I have to like push myself to go to an event, you know, or do something. Do you think that's because since we look at it from this really unique perspective of doing this as a job, that adds an element to it? Like a guy who just, you know, has a normal job, who does this stuff on the weekends, you know, maybe he doesn't look at it like that. Maybe he's just like, it's still that way for him. Like he still just wants to get to the show and go hang out with his friends.
Oh yeah. I think that is definitely a part of it. But I also talk to people that don't do it as a job and that are getting up in age and even a little bit older than me. And we talk about these same things, you know, like, I don't like they work and then on the weekend they just don't want to do anything. Where when you're younger, you work and then on the weekend you just want to go do things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, I see. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? It's like, and I don't know if that's just me. I don't know if that's just the people that I talk to, but it seems like, it's part of the whole thing.
Just like you said, just kind of growing up. But you know, that's a really important way to look at it too. And I think that really ties into my next thing that I want to talk about, which is clubs. And because you said earlier in the conversation, like you have to be comfortable sometimes doing stuff on your own, you know, and just kind of going to events and just finding the fun in it. Mm-hmm. And when you're in a club, that's, I don't know, some people think like since you're in the club, the whole club has to do something and you have to go do all this stuff together, which is not necessarily the case. You know, you can still be in a club and do things on your own and even hang out with other clubs. That happens to me a lot. Like, you know, I'll go to an event, you know, a lot of the club's not there and I have so many friends in other clubs that I'll just hang out with whoever's there.
Yeah, I used to, when I used to start going to SEMA, none of Forbidden Fantasy went to SEMA. And it was all Sever Ties and Negative Camber, and that's all I would hang out with. You know what I mean? And I think people need to realize that that's okay. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like if you're in a truck club, and most of the people listening are in truck clubs, but when you get into a club, the cool thing is like the camaraderie and like rolling into a show with a bunch of people and stuff. But you have to realize that doesn't happen all the time. And in fact, it doesn't happen most of the time. You know, there are some clubs that are bigger than the others and whatnot. So they obviously have more people there all the time. But to me, at least personally, I was always okay with just it being me or me and a couple of buddies or whatever. But I do remember there was a time early on in Forbidden when I first became president in like 98 to the early 2000s where I would press everyone to like, why aren't you here? Why aren't you doing this? Someone didn't take their car to a show. And I'm like, why didn't you bring your car? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And now I see, as I got older, They were a little older than me, and then I got older and I saw
I
I
see.
saw why they didn't, or they couldn't do this or whatever. And I don't have children, so most of the people in the club had children, and once those kids get to a certain age, it's harder. The weekends become a little bit more. I mean, you're seeing it now with softball with your girls.
Yeah, yeah, I'm busy all the time, and that's a delicate balance, especially for like what we do. And since I do this for a job,
Yeah.
like it's a really delicate balance between doing family stuff and the truck stuff and going to shows and stuff like that. But yeah, it's important to find that balance because you could very easily slip into one way or the other. Because I've seen both happen. I've seen it where, and I'm not saying that this is bad in any capacity. What I'm saying is I've just seen this happen before. You have people who get so far into the truck stuff that, you know, they might neglect something in their personal lives that may affect them later. But also there are some people who go the other way. They get so involved in their family life that they forget to like, and that's not saying that the truck stuff is more important than the family stuff. What I'm saying is they forget to kind of almost take care of themselves and do what makes them happy.
Oh yeah,
And I've seen that happen a bunch of times. And what happens is you get so wrapped up in your and I don't want to say family, I want to just say personal stuff because everybody has personal stuff is different. You get so wrapped up in your personal lives that you forget to like take time for yourself and go do stuff that you like. And then eventually what happens is you get to the other end and realize like, man, I should have, you know, maybe I should have done some stuff to take care of myself and my, cause it's like a mental thing too. Like going to a show and having fun is a, you know, it's a positive mental thing, you know?
no, it is. And I see it. There's so many people in our club that are everyone's so different. You know what I mean? And I've seen like older members that I wish sometimes they would come hang out every once in a while just because, you know, it'd be nice to see them. But dude, there'll be 5 years has gone by since I've seen certain people.
Right.
10 years has gone by, and I'll get a message or whatever on Instagram or a message on Facebook or whatever from these same people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I should probably go." I'm like, "Dude, it's been 5 years since you've done something. You know, if you really want to, just do it. If you don't, don't." But yeah, you're right. You do have to take care of yourself and make sure that you're also having fun personally.
Yeah. And that's and kind of to like get into a little bit deeper about me personally. That's sort of like what happened to me because it's funny. And I was going to bring this up to you to hear your perspective of it. You've been in Forbidden Fantasy. This is your first club and you've been in it ever since. I came from a different club. I joined my first club when I was 18 and then got out 13 years later. So I actually have a different kind of a unique perspective from it because you've been a part of Forbidden Fantasy, which is a big club. So you've always been part of a big club. I come from a small local club that I left and then joined Forbidden Fantasy, which is a big club. So it's kind of, I have an interesting perspective on things. And I wanted to bring it up. So my old club, Twisted Obsessions, I joined when I was 18, and which was in 2001. And then I left that club in 2014. So that's the time that I was in there. That club shaped who I am today. You know, it was a smaller club. It was a local club, but everything I did, I mean, those are my formative years. That's when you're learning about life.
Yeah.
So being in that club taught me a lot about not only about being in truck clubs, but being, you know, about in life in general. But what's the interesting perspective is so I left that club, got into Forbidden Fantasy in 2014, a little bit after that. And now I can see both sides of it. I can see the perspective of coming from a small club, going to shows, and being with this really tight knit group of people, which is very small. I mean, we only ever had, you know, maybe 12 members at the most. I think maybe one time we touched like 20. It's been a long time,
Yeah.
you know, but that's, you know, but we were in that. And so I went from that club and joined a club which literally has hundreds of members all over the world. You know, we have our California chapters, we have our Texas chapters, our Canada chapters, Australia, Japan, like we have all these chapters. And so my perspective of coming from a small club to a big club is this: when you're in a small club, you're almost kind of like, and I'm sure it's in big clubs too, but my perspective from a small club, you're so kind of like ingrained in each other's, you know, lives, I guess. You know, you're so ingrained in each other's lives that sometimes it gets a little frustrating and like a little bit difficult. And then when I got to the bigger club, I'm sure that exists in the same space. However, it's such a, you know, wider scale of people and places that I really haven't experienced that being in Forbidden Fantasy. Now being in Forbidden Fantasy for what is that? Almost 7 years,
Yeah, yeah.
8 years, something like that, which is a long enough time to really get a grasp of both things. And so when I was in my old club, I found myself doing that same thing. They would do local shows and kind of like do stuff in SoCal, but I wanted to go out. I wanted to go experience different things. So I found myself going to Arizona a lot. I found myself going up north. And because I was like that, I was like, I can just go to these things and have fun and find people to hang out with. And eventually it got to the point where it was just like, I was always hanging out with Forbidden. I was traveling and going farther and always hanging out with Forbidden. And then, after kind of like, re-looking at everything, I decided that like, I wanted to change gears and change paths.
Well, it does happen in the bigger clubs because essentially a bigger club is just a lot of little clubs made into one bigger club.
That's a good way to put it.
We have San Diego, Southern California, Bakersfield, Central California, Northern California. You know what I mean? And there's, I don't know how many members in each chapter, but yeah, there's definitely that where people get a little bit too close and then whatever happens. But being in a big club versus a small club, I can say that the nice part about it is you can go, like I can go to a show in Central California and there's a couple people there from the club, or a show in Texas and there's a couple people there. That's, it's always different people for the most part. And so it's kind of nice. It's like a variety type thing, right? You're not seeing the same couple of people all the time.
Right.
If that makes any sense. I know I had the thought in my head when you were talking, but it's just like, if you're like, for you live in SoCal, so you're like, okay, I'm going to go to LST and you're going to see some of the Houston guys. You'll get a sprinkle of the Dallas guys in there. And then I'm going to go up to a show in SenCal, and you're not going to see those Dallas guys or those Houston guys. You're going to see the SenCal people. Then some of those SenCal people you also saw in Texas. You know what I mean? So it's just like, it's always something a little bit different, and it's kind of cool like that.
And that's like one of my favorite parts of being in this club and being in a bigger club in particular is like, I get to go to places like Dallas and all of these things. And I get to be like, one of my favorite things to do as we travel is I like going places and just like living in that moment and just being there. So like when I go to Texas and hanging out with the Texas guys, I want to be a Texan, for like a weekend. And it's really neat to experience all of these like different, because there are cultures in themselves, experience all these little different cultures and stuff like that. Like the experience you get hanging with the Dallas guys and Houston guys in Texas is a way different experience than you get hanging with the SenCal guys and like Lindsay.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite. I love Lindsay. Like our viewers probably don't know where Lindsay, California is, but it's this tiny little town. They have one stoplight. And it's this tiny little SenCal town, and I just love that place. It like almost like resets my soul. Yeah. It's really weird. I can't describe it. It's a cool place. But so that is one big difference of coming from a small club into a big club. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about opportunities. I will be blunt and very real with everybody. Being in Forbidden Fantasy has opened me up to so many more doors than being in my previous club. Being in my previous club, and I'm not going to like mention names in particular, but I'm just going to tell a quick story. Being in a small club, being in Twisted Obsessions, me and Angie, we at some point, doing what we do, having our brand, we got like not a feature, but got mentioned in Mini Truckin. We like our products were like featured in Mini Truckin, and it was like that was one of the pinnacles of my my career, I guess. It was so cool. We grew up reading this magazine, poring over every issue. And I haven't had a feature truck, so I guess like someone who has a feature truck would have the same feeling, but this was my personal experience. And poring over this magazine for so many years, and to finally have your name and something you created in it was a big accomplishment. So we go to a meeting and we're like, hey, look at this, look at what we achieved. And one of the people there was like, what's that? I was like, we are in Mini Truckin. He's like, what's Mini Truckin? And I was like, hold on. Which wasn't, I'm not saying that was like one of the things that made us, leave that club, but it was just one of the memorable things. I was just like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's funny when it comes to clubs in general, because there's so many if you're out there and listening to this and you're like, I want to get in a club, I just don't know which club to get in. And you like go hang out with clubs because like they're not all the same.
No.
No.
Every club is way different.
Oh, there's some clubs that are way different. But, so it's just I don't want to say get in where you fit in, but you're going to get along with a certain different type of people,
I have the perfect analogy for you. And Jap from Freaks of Nature told me this one time, because it was a struggle going from, it's almost like, I don't know if it's maybe not the same for some people, but for me personally, it was like almost like a huge life decision to leave this club that I was with for so long to pursue this other club and now get into a different club. It was a big decision, and it was almost like I would like talk to people and get people's opinions, and it was a big thing, right? Mm-hmm. So, one time talking to Jap, he put it pretty eloquently. He said, we're all part of a giant puzzle. Mini trucking is a giant puzzle. However, we come in little different boxes. So like we have to come in a box and fit with our little pieces that go into the bigger puzzle. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just need to find the right little pack you fit in, and sometimes that changes. Maybe sometimes when you start, you fit into this pack, and then, you change and then you move, but I think that's a really good analogy that clubs and people in general are much part of the much grander picture.
Oh yeah. Big time.
You know what I mean?
And again, this goes back to the person trying, like looking at getting into a club, or even if you're in a club now, you don't expect that club to do things for you. You should do things for that club. Because if you get into a club and you're expecting certain things like to change your life, it's not how it works. Right. Being the club the president of Forbidden Fantasy since '98 now, you see certain members come and you see certain members go, and the ones that usually go are the ones that came expecting the club to do things for them.
Right.
The only thing the club does for you is provide a space for you to hang out. You know what I mean? And a group of people, like-minded people to gather and such. You know what I mean? That's really it. So
yeah, a lot of people ask me, they're like, I actually just recently got asked this question. They're like, what's the benefit of being a club? What's the pros and cons, so to speak, And I don't think I want to get into like specific pros and cons. That seems, a little too nitpicky, but but I think you're exactly right. It's not like, it's kind of to quote John F. Kennedy, it's not what you could do or what your club can do for you. It's what you can do for your club. It's like what you're going to take out of it. And for me personally, what I take out of a club is I just like being part of, I take it for what it's worth, but I like rolling up to somewhere and having all of these nice rides and having, all of this like you said, kind of camaraderie, like this group of people rolling in. That's one part I like. And from my perspective, I always knew I was going to be in a club, even from being a young person, just learning about cars and liking cars. And that kind of goes back to the whole culture thing. I said, I knew I was going to be a part of a club. And I've said previously that my first thought was I thought I was going to be in a lowrider club, but I quickly realized that like a lowrider club isn't really my fit. Then I found mini trucking in a mini truck club and found out that, it's a much better fit.
It's also a lot cheaper.
Well, yeah, building a mini truck. Well, I mean, nowadays. No, it's still cheaper. Yeah.
So I have some notes here. There's these words that people use to describe mini trucking, and I want to ask you, which one do you think it is? A family, a sport, or a scene?
Oh man, I hear those all the time too, and I have some strong opinion. No, I'm just kidding. I don't really have a strong opinion, but I do have opinion about that. And as always, this is just my opinion on it.
Yes.
I think it's a scene. I think family is an interesting word to me. And I'm not saying that I don't consider like all of these people in clubs and in our club and other clubs in the scene in general as close friends. I consider some of these people very close friends, intimate close friends. But added family is a kind of a weird word. I've always thought of that.
I'm in the same boat, and we've had that discussion before. And I even got some flack from a couple of our members one time because I told them, like, it's not that I don't consider this a family, but I don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I consider these people, some of these people, like you said, my very good friends, lifelong friends, people I'm going to know until the day one of us is gone. You know what I mean? Like that's just the way it is. But family is a very strange word, especially when people are like, everyone says this, like brother, hey brother, you know what I mean? Like I get it. And it's just the way some people talk and stuff like that. But, it's always been a strange thing with me. And then sports, but the same thing with sport.
That's
sports
also
always right. Is it a sport? It's not a sport. And if it was, then we're all coming in last.
Yeah, sports another weird way to put it. But let me add one more thought to the whole family thing, which people probably listening to are thinking like, "Hey, you hypocrite! You write FFF family all the time or FFF fam," and I think that's just because it's kitschy. You know, it's fun. Like we do so many things with the FFF like thing that it sort of just kind of like is a natural thing. Like, of course you would use it like that. Like I refer to myself as FFF Frank. You know, like it's just kitschy. It's fun.
Is that 4 Fs?
No, that's 3 Fs. Sorry. Frank.
Okay. Yeah. And anyone that wants to give us crap about this not being a family or being a family, there's some things I've seen y'all do to each other that family wouldn't do. So
now you're letting out the intimate. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh no, everyone knows that there's some stuff.
That's like with every club, though. Every club has that. The small clubs, the big clubs, and I guess that's kind of like contrary to what I was saying earlier about small clubs being so wrapped up in their own business. Maybe that was not the correct way to put it, but I'm just saying that there's a big difference between being in a small, tight knit group of people who are just one locale, and then tight knit groups of people who are further spread out all over the world.
Well, and like I was saying, it still happens in the spread out ones, but like what happens in one chapter, the other chapter doesn't care. They don't want to hear that bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't involve them. So.
Right. And it's kind of, in at least from our perspective in our club, like, a lot of that, it doesn't really escape most of that, that bubble, I guess is a right way to say it.
Yeah. And I've kind of
doesn't do that.
I've kind of, I don't want to say, I kind of set the tone a long time ago that if there is drama, quote unquote, or whatever within the club or the chapter within two people, like handle it, keep it with like, you don't put it on the club chat.
So the other kind of interesting perspective of being, from my perspective, coming from a small club and going into a big club is like, I used to look at clubs like Forbidden Fantasy and No Regrets and Severed Ties. And to me, being younger in my old club, I would look at those clubs and it was almost intimidating if you think about it, like, because these clubs are so big, they got so many members and so many rides and some amazing rides. It was really intimidating to be from a small club from the desert and go to shows. And then, much later on, I realized that, everybody's cool and just everybody is fine. But, way in the beginning, it was like that, like, like, oh my gosh, that's Severed, like you almost didn't want to go like talk to Severed or like, cause you didn't want to like piss them off or something. Cause you might get beat up or something,
Oh, I know that back in the day.
That was way back in the day.
Yeah. They, a funny thing, and it kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier with when you guys were in the magazine in Mini Truckin', and it was like, oh yeah. It's funny the detachment now that we have with that sort of thing, because I remember when I first got into Mini Truckin', I don't remember who was editor of Mini Truckin' at the time, but there was like Mike Self and I think Shartis and Courtney and a bunch of these people. And I idolized these people because they were the editor of a magazine. And I'm like, it's like a fame thing, you know what I mean? Almost like an actor or a celebrity. But now an editor of a magazine, and because you can only see these people at like a car show. You'd be walking around and be like, oh my God, that's so-and-so. They're the editor. And you didn't want to go up and talk to them because it felt intimidating. But now, like people now don't have that same thing because the internet, you could just DM them.
Right. Well, yeah, that's true. That's true.
You know what I mean? Like we couldn't do that before. You couldn't even email. Well, you really couldn't even email them much back when I first started. But yeah, I always thought that was kind of
that's so funny you should say that, because that's actually one of my notes. And one of my notes being kind of intimidated, by these bigger clubs. You were intimidated, not intimidated, but like you said, they almost were like, I guess celebrities. I don't know if that's the right word, but they were people that definitely you admired who did something right. And I have a very funny story about Mike Finnegan, because starting out early 2000s, consuming all the media I can for Mini Truckin. You're right. You're like, you remember how editors used to do like little, I don't know what they're called, but they would like just have like a little blurb. Like the editor would say something and be like, they're that month's thoughts, the editor's thoughts, right?
Oh, you mean the editorial?
Yeah, there. Yes, that thing. I would read the magazine. I'd read those, and it was like you were reading the personal thoughts of all these people. And so one time we're down in Orange County at a cruise night. I'm with my club. We're hanging out. Everything's cool. And this square-bodied dually comes in. It was green, body dropped. And he just comes in, skates in, boom, lays it out. And I'm like checking out the truck and I'm looking at it. And the door opens and Finnegan walks out. And I'm like, and I look up and I like, because, the editorials always had the picture of the person, right? So I knew what he looked like. And I'm like, are you Mike Finnegan? And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, dude, you write about the coolest shit. I read every one of your articles. Like I was totally fanboying over from Mike Finnegan.
And the funny thing is now he's a real celebrity.
Oh yeah, that is true. Yeah, he is a legit celebrity now. Yeah. So that's funny that happened to me a couple of times. And then even like after being in the scene for, for 15 years and then even getting into the big club, you're like, I mean, it's interesting because once you meet the people, you realize, oh, they're just cool people, and we meet all sorts of people every single day. But sometimes I find myself, I'm like, I'd be talking to someone and I'd be like, man, 10 years ago, I would thought like this guy, like, you know what I mean? You don't understand what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say like it was a weird kind of like experience going from like learning about people, reading about them and watching them build stuff and then meeting the person. And then you kind of have like this like surreal moment where you're like, oh yeah, wow, this is like just a normal dude that I'm talking to,
Yeah. I remember the transformation for me when I went from being the guy that didn't know anyone to the guy that started his own magazine. And Lance Martz at the time was the editor of Mini Truckin'. And he wrote in the editorial of Mini Truckin', like me and Lance, we still are friends, but we were friends back then. And he was good friends with Sean Thurman and doing some projects in the magazine, Sean Thurman from our Dallas chapter. Well, so here's me and Galen starting this magazine. And then all of a sudden we put a mini truck on the magazine and now we're competition.
Oh.
Right. And Lance wrote in the Mini Truckin' editorial about Grinder magazine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he's just like basically, so it was funny the transformation of going from looking up to these people to almost being one of them and now I don't know. You know what I mean? Now being that person that a lot of people will message and ask questions and stuff like that.
To be completely honest, that's where we're at right now. We've sort of like come full circle because now, without sounding conceited or anything, we are now those people. Like people watch our stuff, they watch our videos, they like what we do. Yeah. They want to talk to us and hang out. Which I love. That's one of my favorite parts of doing all this stuff. And it's happened a couple of times. No one specifically, but a couple of times we'll go to a show, and I like hanging out with anybody. Like you want to come hang out at the booth at a show, come on by. I got Liquid Deaths. I got beer. Like if you want to hang out, right? And I find myself sometimes like someone will come to the booth. Hey man, it's really great to meet you. I like your stuff. I'm like, thanks. And I'm like, hey man, you want a beer? You want to hang out? And they're like, no, I just want to say hi. And I'm like, oh, I thought we were gonna hang out. So
but yeah, I think that's because we were those people, so we knew what it was, and I'm the same way. It's just like
and that's why I try really hard right now to be very like kind to people. I mean, you should be kind to people anyway. Like that, you should just be kind to people. But I really try hard to be kind to everybody. Listen to them, because they're excited. They want to tell us about what they're building, what they're doing, and I am genuinely interested in it too. And it's and it kind of like takes people aback sometimes because we'll go to a show, I'll meet somebody and they'll tell me about their stuff, and then next year we'll come back. I'm like, hey man, how's your project? How's your Toyota you're working on? They're like, oh wow, you remembered talking about it? I said, yeah, I remember talking about that. So
which is crazy because I don't remember a lot of things.
Oh.
I barely remember sometimes what me and you talk about, you know what I mean? But I'll remember, at a show, someone will walk up and it'll just like click that memory and like have a conversation about it. And it's really cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
So, what else is on your notes there?
So we're kind of ripping through this thing because the next thing that I had on my list is trucks specifically, like trucks that we like.
That That could be its own topic on itself.
Well, I know that's
man.
any of these topics can be.
Well, this is mini trucking. The topic could be mini trucks.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean,
that could be a total different one, but I mean, we can get into it.
Actually, if we won't get into like specifics, but one thing that I wanted to tie this conversation together with, sort of going back to what I like or what we like about the scene and what we like about mini trucks in general, and is this thing that like years and years ago I had this Mazda. It was actually Angie's Mazda when I was driving it a lot of the time. So we had this Mazda. It was a black standard cab on hydraulics. And I remember driving it one time and I'm like, you know what? This is my generation's like 32 Ford. You know what I mean? Like if you were to look at a 32 Ford Highboy, like that is the quintessential hot rod. Like you identify that car with hot rod culture. Now, I'm not saying Mazdas specifically are that, but I'm just saying that like these Mazdas and Toyotas and the trucks we're building are our generation's 32 Ford, in the sense that when they were building 32 Fords back in the, after the war in the late 40s and 50s, they were taking cars that no one wanted, that were cheap. Like you could buy a body for $10, you could buy a motor for, $20, and you could build this relatively cheap, really cool piece of machinery. And to me, that's what mini trucking is. Mini trucks in general are today. Granted, that's a little bit different, but in the height of it, they were cheap vehicles to do cheap modifications to go take them to a run and have a good time.
Oh yeah, then that generation now is different. So that was your generation, whereas that generation is now different. So what are kids that are 16, 17? What is accessible to a 16 and 17-year-old kid now?
Well, there's bad news about that.
Yeah. But also you have to look at VWs too.
Oh, yeah.
So VWs were also accessible. Like anything that's when you're 16, 17, 18, that's a grand or a couple grand, that is going to be popular, you know what I mean, and create a scene into itself. And that's what mini trucking was. And then as people got older in their 20s with a little more money, a little more customization, a little more this, a little more that. And same with the VWs. And I would say same with the full size, the NBS trucks now with some of the younger guys.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You go to these truck shows and there's hundreds and hundreds of these NBS trucks with exhaust and performance mods, and you know what I mean? And that's kind of what they're doing, because that stuff is cheap, relatively cheap.
Yeah.
After the OBS trucks now are a little bit out of reach for people. Mm-hmm. But you could still find a mid to high mileage NBS truck for, $3,000, $4,000. That's a little bit beat up. Mm-hmm. Throw some stock wheels on it, some upgraded stock wheels, factory reps or whatever. Mm-hmm. And a couple of cheap performance mods and you're off to the races.
Yeah, no, that's, I didn't really think about that, but yeah, you're right. That's because we are of an older generation, I guess, but
yeah, we are. And a lot of guys don't think, a lot of guys will talk crap about those guys, but it's just like, no, they're doing what we did. Mm-hmm. And they're also exactly doing what the guys in the 60s did with Mustangs and Camaros. They're just doing it with trucks.
Right. And then there were people, when we were building trucks that looked at it like, this is ridiculous. That's just a generational thing. And we won't get way into that, but that's just, it always happens. But to touch back on a couple things, one, the VW thing. The VW scene and the mini truck scene have been so parallel to each other. Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting when you listen to builders, like really well-known builders who build amazing, automobiles in this day and age. They always say one of two things. I started in mini trucks or I started in Volkswagens.
Yeah. Even a lot of the C10 guys, it's one or the other.
Well, yeah, the C10 scene is growing exponentially. It's getting so big, and like you've said before, a lot of those C10 guys are just crossing over from mini trucks, and that's why we say mini truck is such a blanket term, because they're to me, maybe they don't agree with me, but to me, those people are still mini truckers.
Oh, they 100%, and there's a buddy of mine in the video world. He's also a mini trucker. But he does like, for a living, he does a lot of video stuff for like HBO and things like that. And he's actually, I want to get him on here and as a guest once we start doing the guest stuff, but we've been going back and forth with this documentary that we want to create. We need to do it because we were talking the other day. Because one of the old editors and founders of Street Trucks magazine passed away, and we were like, "Hey, we need to start interviewing these guys because they're we're not getting any younger.
Right.
Let's just say that.
Yeah.
And but yeah, we kind of want to create a documentary where we show, like, if you were 16 years old, 17, 18, and you went to a truck run at La Paz and you partied and from that you are now your career is built around that. Like that swayed your entire life. Like maybe you were 15 and you're like, I want to be a firefighter. And then you went to this truck show and you're like, no, I want to do something with trucks. And now you're like, so.
No, that's a really interesting way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't even know where that whole thing started, but that whole conversation started, but that's where
I was just, it just started that I was saying that, like, from my perspective, my Mazda was my generation's 32 Ford.
And then okay, cool. Yeah. That's where my brain just kind of shuts off. Sometimes I'll start talking and then I will just go down an entire I will take the conversation into something that it didn't even intend to start with.
That's podcasting, baby.
That's just me in general. So if you ever are like, what the F is he talking about?
Yeah.
Frank was asking about these VW guys, and now he's talking about doing a documentary.
It's and firefighters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, final thoughts.
Mini trucking for life.
I like that. I love mini trucking. I love mini trucks, and we were just talking about how some people, they started mini trucks, like the C10 guys or hot rod guys or like all these different guys. They started mini trucking and they move on to these different things. I maybe holding me back, but I like this, man. I like what I do. I like these trucks.
I don't think that's holding you back. I think something that there's other things that might be holding you back, but like finances.
Oh, I thought you were gonna.
No, because like if you had a lot of money, you would like build that Ford.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that's not a mini truck. You would probably have a 64 Impala. Like if you had a lot of money.
That's true.
Right. And that's the thing that's what mini trucking is, though. It's like we do with what we can. You know what I mean? And we can take these little trucks and have no remorse about cutting them up.
Yeah.
Because they're not like $1 million vehicles, or they're not rare. Or now they're probably are getting more rare. Anyways, but that's just kind of what it is. But yeah. I like mini trucking because, like you said, it's a blanket statement, and you don't. Like you could do anything. A mini trucker can build anything and still be a mini trucker. Mm-hmm. Right? So you could build a C10, lay it on the ground. You can tell who's the mini trucker and who is not the mini trucker.
Oh, I bet.
Or even supercars, or even, there's mini truckers that own supercars now and they're completely modified. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's just like, so it is one of those things. You see it when you watch Roadkill with Finnegan, you still see the mini trucker in him. Mm-hmm. Trey 5, Jeremy, he probably will never build a mini truck again, but the way he builds his vehicles at his shop are influenced by his mini trucking days.
Yeah. There are so many builds now, or so many like scenes that, lend from the mini truck scene as far as like suspensions and building and all sorts of stuff. But
and I think it's just, it all comes down to mini truckers aren't scared.
That's good. Oh, I like that.
They're not scared they're not scared to cut the back of an entire truck off.
That's true.
They're not scared to cut a door handle out. They're not scared to do anything where maybe a typical, I don't want to say typical, but maybe there are car builders out there, people out there that just go, well, I'm not going to cut my frame.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do this or cut this,
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So yeah, so my final thoughts on the whole thing is the mini truck scene in general is ever evolving. I still like doing it. I see it only getting better. We can get into a whole conversation about that, about people who say things are not like they were, or things used to be better back in the day. that's a whole topic on its own. But I do.
Anyone that says that's just making an excuse.
Oh, could be.
If you say, "Oh, the good old days, I wish I could do that again," they're just making an excuse for not doing it because
That's true.
it still happens. I have my own opinions about the future, and I even have the future with a question mark written down right here.
Oh, it's how mysterious the future question mark.
Yeah, well, the future of mini trucking in general.
No, I get it. I get it. Which could be another whole long conversation. But I'm just trying to wrap up, my thoughts on it. I think the scene is doing really well. I think trucks are doing really well. I think we're building better trucks now than I don't want to say at any other point because there have been some amazing trucks that have been built over the years. But I think with the access that we have to knowledge, number one, I think the access we have to knowledge is great. I think the access we have to material and parts is better than it's ever been. Technology for that stuff is as good as it's ever been. And people are really, in my opinion, and from all these travels and really looking at it, people are really starting to take their time to build these things. It's not 20 years ago when we were doing literally whatever it took to get this truck on the ground and get it bagged so we can go cruise it. Now it's, I want to get this truck on the ground to go cruise it, but I want it built to a spec that is of hot rod quality or off-road capability quality to where it is a fully functional thing that's going to work every single time.
Yeah, well, and also people have more money. You know what I mean? When you're in your 40s, in your 40s, you simply have more money, and that's when you're young, you don't have as much money. You do what you can. When you're older, you're doing the things now that you wanted to back then. You're just more capable. Mm-hmm. With, like you said, it comes naturally, knowledge and finances.
Yeah,
essentially, but.
And it's just everybody just continuing to do, and it, kind of like one of the points that I was trying to make with like the 32 Ford analogy is the mini truck scene has gone through the same evolution. People start off building very cheap hot rods, and then 40 years later, they're building $1 million, 40, 50 years later, however many years it is now. Now they're building $1 million hot rods. Now, I'm not saying that people are going to make $1 million mini trucks. I'm just saying that is the same trajectory of starting with these, basic things and then evolving into creating this automotive art, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, most of the guys that are building mini trucks now to that caliber are either one, have built mini trucks, have moved on to something else, and now are coming back around to the mini truck stuff because they're like, I want to build a Toyota like I had when I was younger, but I want to do it because now I have more knowledge,
Oh yeah, and that's happening so much. That's happening a lot.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's I don't know. I have my own opinions on that, and I'll kind of not voice them on this, but
that's fine. And we have a lot of time to talk. We have a lot more episodes coming up, so we have a lot more time to talk.
Yeah, and you know what we need to do? We need to end this episode so we can record an intro to the episode.
Okay. Yeah, we could do that.
All right.
So the only other thing I mentioned it in last week's episode that I came ill-prepared with dates and locations and stuff for shows. So I just wanted to bring that up real quick. Starting with the council show. Last week I didn't know when it was going to go down. It's going down this Sunday. So by the time this episode comes out, the show will have passed and people will be like, well, we could use that information last week.
Oh, so are you taking the 4Runner?
I am. Yeah, I'm going to take the 4Runner down. I'm going to.
Did you go? Did you replace your rusty lug nuts yet?
No.
So much for pride in your club logo, Frank.
Right, I know, right? No, I've said this to a lot of people actually just recently. For as much as we do this as a hobby and we have so much pride in these vehicles and stuff like that, I'm the worst show truck owner. I'm really bad at it.
As your club president, Frank.
You
need to replace your lug nuts and take a little bit of pride in that back logo.
I will not probably do that.
You have to do that. You can't have rusty lug nuts.
I know. So that's the council show. I'm going to change the subject real quick. That's the council show, but also I have the dates for Neptune's Net, the show we were talking about last week. That is July 30th. And that's hosted by Mini Truck Revival. And then Dockweiler, also hosted by Mini Truck Revival, is October 9th. So
Oh, cool.
keep those dates in mind. And
these are all
hopefully we'll see them up
and these are all things you're taking the Forerunner to.
there. I am.
I can't wait to have something to take to those, especially
coming.
Dockweiler.
It's coming.
Yeah, it is. It is coming.
Cool.
Very, very, very fast too. But I kind of like with the OBS that I'm doing. I kind of was like, I don't want to take that to Dockweiler.
Yeah, I get it. Like Brother Dave from the club, we call him Brother Dave because we have many Daves, and he just happens to be the brother of another member, Rob, so we call him Brother Dave.
Yeah.
Quick explanation. Brother Dave was thinking the same thing. He's like, well, he has a full-size OBS, and he's like, well, I would say just go. It's an experience. Like, even if you had a full-size truck or a mini truck or whatever, it's an experience for sure.
Yeah, and that's going to be a cool episode when we get Vic on to talk about that whole scene too.
Yeah. I can't wait for that. And that's actually what we're working on right now. So hopefully we have guests soon. We said that on last week's podcast, but we're saying that again. We're working on it. So hopefully we can have guests.
We're still trying to figure out our technical difficulties here. So once we can't be figuring out everybody else's too.
Right on. Well, cool. Well, that it?
That's it.
All right. Hey, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.